So we know that intellectual property is central to this innovation economy. The question is then, we need to change how we manage it, because as we saw in the past, we weren't managing it awfully effectively. So if this was the old model, I'd argue to you that this is the new model. It's one in which the importance of the role is now primary. It's absolutely critical within the business. It really is the business. As we saw again, the lectern, the lights, everything began as intellectual property. It's at a senior or executive management level, and its role within the business is to create value for the business. In fact, it's the only true way that you create value within the business is leveraging your IP. How do you access IP? You can access it both internally and externally. And external IP is actively encouraged. You want to encourage people to come to you to present you new ideas. They think differently than you do, and they open up your eyes. Unused IP is actively released. The economic return, it should be a profit center within the business, as we saw for Texas Instruments, IBM, etc. The KPIs for the IP manager, if you have one, return on assets managed or revenue generated. It's totally different focus. And who drives the process? It's no longer your patent attorneys, it's your senior management inside your business. So what do we see that New Zealand organisations need to do? They need to rapidly invest in developing, or alternatively contracting in, strong intellectual property management competency. IP management has to become a core focus in business strategy, and it needs board-level buy-in. That means increased seniority, increased mandate and funding. For example, in the United States, typically at least 5 to 7% of R&D is given over to management of the intellectual property portfolios. Sole reliance on your IP attorneys is not advisable. I mean, patent attorneys are highly skilled in IP protection. They are extremely important to this process, but they're often not qualified to advise on IP commercialization issues, which involve business and technical risks that they simply aren't qualified to provide advice on. And secondly, they're not independent. We had a client recently, a well-known New Zealand firm, who had decided they needed to get into innovation. And so they said, right, we're going to get into innovation and we're going to go and hire a patent attorney firm, and they're in charge of our IP management program. And I was like, are you guys nuts? This is like leaving a drunk in charge of a brewery. All you're going to do is end up with a huge number of patents that are of very limited value to you and an enormous bill. It's something that you need to bring in-house and really understand, and needs to be driven by the business. And finally, organisations need to rethink how the creation and commercialisation of IP is actually compensated. There's some good examples from Texas Instruments where engineers who've come up with valuable IP are actually earning more than the CEOs, because they are earning a royalty on the intellectual property that they created. The company doesn't care, because the company's making vastly more than that. So there's some really interesting ways that we can encourage people to develop IP. Two books that I'd highly recommend if you're interested in this space. The first, Andy Kessler, Running Money. Fantastic book, really, really interesting exposition about the interaction of technology and financial markets, capital raising, etc. And he's a really easy, great read. The second one, GavCal, by GavCal Research. Fantastic Hong Kong-based Frenchman. I think he's one of the most brilliant economists on the planet today. Very, very interesting if you're interested in the platform company model and about looking at how platform companies are working. One problem with GavCal is that it's incredibly hard to get your hands on. So if you are interested, we've got some copies that we can lend out to people if you're interested in that. And hopefully I've caught up a little bit. I might even have left enough time for some questions if anyone does have any. Thank you.
Any questions? Could I just ask one, if I may? On that example from Fonterra, you'd actually actively gone out and sought that technology for them. You were working with them and identified a need and then sourced that technology for that packaging. Is that how that worked?
No, actually that one was different. Someone approached us with an idea, which often happens, and we said, look, this is a very clever idea, and it wasn't going to work the way they'd originally constructed it. It was impossible to manufacture it, but we figured out how it could be manufactured, and so we patented that, and then we looked at who would be appropriate to license it to, and Fonterra was one of them, and so we got our hands on some of their plastic and made sure we understood exactly how their manufacturing process worked and turned up and said, you can do this with your machines. And the engineers said, that's impossible, it will never work without plastic. And we said, well, that's actually your plastic. After convincing their engineers that it could be done, a very visionary guy at Fonterra said, yep, let's go for it, and it's become a roaring success.
That's great.
Yeah.
Was that a New Zealand company that had devised that IP?
Yes. Yeah, it was.
And so you're sort of marketing that IP for them?
Exactly. That's what we do. We help them commercialize IP.
Yeah, that's a fascinating example. That's good, thanks. Any other questions? No? Look, thank you very much indeed, Paul. That was superb, and really great to be able to stand back and think in terms of that dramatic shift in the landscape. I mean, I love that chart about the pharmaceutical companies, where their development costs are rising faster than their revenues. I mean, it's a seriously stuffed model.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. There we are.
Thank you very much.
Which, of course, is no trap that anybody in this room is going to fall into.
Of course.
Thank